and adventurous. Chris Bonington tells the story of the climbers, from the pioneers of history to the present day. Part 1, recreating a classic ascent by Alfred Mummery.
There wasn't as much loose snow as this when they made the first ascent. You're certainly looking a very elegant Vanette there, Hervé. Yes, I'm very glad that I'm playing the part of Mummery. Got a nice strong rope, a tight rope from Herr Bergner out in front.
Okay, I move.
We had all come to play our parts, recreating historic events of 100 years ago.
Whoops!
We hadn't met before, and we'd need to quickly start working as a team. Recreating a classic alpine climb isn't a pushover.
It's not easy, is it? Oh. And we can bring up our friend Vanette's.
Tweeds, woolen stockings, velour hat. The uniform of the gentlemen climbers who, over a century ago, first made the scrambled steps which marked out the Alps as Europe's playground.
Well, probably as casual back in the 1880s. I'll give you a pull-up.
Thanks.
Here we are.
But for the British, this was more a stage set than a playground. Somewhere they could live out their newfound love of the mountains. Chamonix was their original base camp, but there were those for whom climbing was not a question of testing your skills. Alfred Mummery was a merchant's son from Kent, a man with the means and the will to jump the constraints of Victorian commerce, a man who was blackballed by the English Alpine Club, a shadowy figure only known through this one book which describes both his pioneering climbs and also outlines his philosophy. For Mummery, like those of us who followed in his footsteps, the hardest climb was always the best. We are recreating his famous climb of 1881 on the Grepon. It's about the nearest thing to the greased pole suitable only for gymnasts, which Ruskin alleged Mummery and the new breed of mountaineers mistook for grandeur.
Before quitting the summit of one of the steepest rocks in the Alps, I may perhaps be permitted to ask certain critics whether the love of rock climbing is so heinous and debasing a sin that its votaries are no longer worthy to be ranked as mountaineers, but are to be relegated to a despised and special class of mere gymnasts. To say that a man who climbs because he is fond of mountaineering work is not a mountaineer, whilst a man who climbs because it is essential to some scientific pursuit in which he is interested is a mountaineer, is contrary to the first principles of a logical definition.
Well, Mummery would have approved of one thing. Our aim wasn't scientific either. The purpose of our expedition was to step back not just into the clothes and equipment of these famous climbing pioneers, but hopefully into their minds as well.
With some Swiss guides, not with Chamonix guides.
I had been joined in my quest by Jean-Franc Charlet, who was to be the chief guide Bergner. Jean-Franc's a native of Chamonix, someone who comes from 4 generations of guides. someone who, like Bergner, would be masterminding our ascent of the Grepon.
And myself, I feel a little bit anxious to go and climb with this equipment, the Grepon, because
Hervé Tivierge was to play Venetz, the brilliant young guide whose outstanding climbing was the key to success. Hervé's an inspired climber, totally at home on Chamonix granite, and ideally suited to leading the route. Mummery's reputation and influence are undiminished by the passing years. It inspired John Hunt's early climbing.
My very first season in the Alps was here in Chamonix, and I wanted, because of Mummery, to traverse the Grepon. And he was a hero figure, of course, because he was in the new generation at that time, in my mind.
Reinhold Messner is one of the superstars of modern climbing. He has superstar status and the wealth that goes with it. But he too acknowledges Alfred Mummery's pioneering achievements.
I think Mummery is one of the most important figures in the whole mountaineering history, and he stays exactly between mountaineering and modern climbing. The view that the modern rock climbing begins in the 70s and the 80s is totally wrong. It had a clear evolution before the First World War in the Eastern Alps especially, after the Second World War in the Dolomites in the Italian Alps with the Italian Sestogrado. The Italians were leading after the Second World War with a few British, with Joe Brown and Don Williams and so on. Afterwards also a few new heads from France, from French, and from America. And after only onwards came the evolution again, because they forgot all the bolts, they forgot all the technical aids, and again they came back exactly to the same climbs and to the same philosophy. Mummery started with his by fair means just more than 100 years ago.
By fair means, the Mummery doctrine of what odds a climber should give himself against the mountain. It meant deliberately choosing a difficult route and giving the mountain a chance. We started our climb, as said Mummery, with little more protection than alpine shepherds in search of lost sheep. The boots, apart from the clinkers, were standard issue. The alpenstock seemed more ornamental than useful. But we were all going to depend upon those ropes around our waists before the climb was out. And so we set out for the Grepon, sandwiched on that distinctive ridge between the valley of Chamonix and the Mer de Glace. The valley bottom is just 1,000 metres. The summit of the Grepon a daunting 3,482. We began the climb proper at the foot of the Mummery crack, a precarious if spectacular vantage point.
Right, now to be correct as Venetz, that's your pitch, Hervé.
Okay, I'm quite sure it wasn't sized up when he did it.
The Mummery crack with out protection and with nails, and I think it's not 4+. It's probably, I don't know, it's difficult to say, but without protection is very difficult. I think it's underrated because it's still a long climb with this high altitude. It's a difficult route finding because the way is not marked and there's no pitons. So, and most of the people they climb on the practice, and they have pitons, and they are good on a cliff and even on a difficult climb on a cliff. But when they get in a high mountain like on a Grepon with no piton, and is like the Mummery crack, it's a different kind of technique. It's a lot of chimney. It's a long climb. They think it's only grade D difficult, and they have problem. There is a lot of rescue on a Grepon.
Je suis mal, putain. La vache, c'est fou. Ah bah dis donc. Well done. Nice to be on the ledge, huh? I don't feel anything.
What does it look like above?
Nice.
The inside of the crack icy as well.
Yeah, it's a little bit icy. And some fresh snow also.
We were attempting Mummery's route at the end of July, virtually the same time of year as the original ascent. But this year, there was a lethal coating of ice in the cracks, and despite the sun, it was bitterly cold.
I'm nearly there. Oh, that certainly must have been a quite extraordinary rock climber. Are you at the top?
Not yet. Almost.
It's the elation that the nets must have felt when he actually got up there. Yeah. Okay, the nets, I'm climbing! God. Well, Mummery didn't have that little bit of help.
It's good.
Then at least it was a lot warmer than it is now. Whew. Well, Mummery commented, he must have been here. He's amazed that the nets could reach it when he had a much shorter reach than he did. I think one of the frames applicable to me.
At one or two places, progress was very difficult, the crack being in part too wide to afford any hold, and forcing the climber onto the face of the slab. I subsequently found that at the worst point, my longer reach enabled me to get hold of a small protuberance with one finger. But how the nets, whose reach is certainly a foot less than mine, managed to get up, has never been satisfactorily explained.
That's like the good old stuff. An occasional need, a healthy pull from above. Heavy, you did very, very well to lead that. And it makes you realise what a superb climber the nets must have been years ahead of his time. It was strenuous.
You don't feel the cold?
No, I'm not feeling the cold too badly. I think the adrenaline's pumping too hard. It's all too easy. You can get your nail boot jammed in well, then you can't get the damn thing out. When your hands are cold, they get slippery, and the friction's even worse.
Using Victorian equipment, I was painfully aware how Mummery must have felt on that first ascent.
Wasn't that an incredible lead
Quite a
at
very...
that time? I mean, it's a pretty good lead on your part.
That the technique of our sport has made rapid progress is alleged against us as a sort of crime. But I venture to say, in reality, it is a matter not for regret, but for congratulation. To emulate the skill of their guides was the ideal of the early climbers, and I trust it will still be the ideal that we set before ourselves.
He led climbing a great leap forward and introduced something entirely new. He must have been a most exceptional chap in flouting the tradition, or saying that stage is behind us now. Let's go for a totally new concept, not repeating routes, but finding new ways. But he was deliberately going for the harder routes, and therefore he was an outstanding pioneer.
Mummery was the first one to say, okay, I did difficult climbs with a guide. I was interested to be the first on such and such peak, and I did with the guide as the second, the guide leading an ascent. And he by his own had the idea to say, I'm not interested in being the first on the summit. I'm forgetting now the moments when I was led. Now I am going to see if I am able to do it. And this is the beginning of modern rock climbing. And if somebody, one of the top climbers of today, goes back on the old routes with their equipment, he finds out they are today still top difficult climbs with their equipment. They knew in case of a big fall, 60, 70 meters, the rope would break. But they were so strong in free rock climbing that they feel safe and they use the rope more or less to take up the second one.
Let the axe get. Just pull in tight as I go up. The dread is all that.
One, two, three.
That's it.
Great, thanks a lot. Well, I wouldn't break the bottle of Bouvier anyway.
You broke it?
I don't think so, no.
Can you go there?
Okay, I'll get out of the way. Oh, well done, Jean-Franc.
The three of us had set out as strangers, but the climb had brought out our friendship and our admiration for these pioneers.
Yeah, it's very impressive, huh? And the thing, you know, they have no protection and they have nothing to retreat in case it was coming too hard. They have no gear to retreat. They have just to go up, up, up. Impossible to go down. Well, that's just if they find a good place. But in a crack like this, the only possibility was to go up.
That's right, that was an amazing ascent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We'd spent over 5 hours on the route, climbing Mummery's Crack and the Ratachèvre or Goat's Rake. But to get nearer the summit, we first had to abseil down. Today it's a controlled manoeuvre. In Mummery's day, it was literally a step into the unknown.
As there did not appear any other method of descent, we fixed our spare rope, having first tied 2 or 3 knots at suitable intervals. The nets went down first, and after he had made a short inspection, he called on us to follow.
God, it's painful. You know, Jean-Franc, I mean, we really are cheating here. Firstly, it's a nylon rope.
Yeah.
And they were using just the alpine hemp rope. And I think all Mummery did was tie a couple of knots in it. And they went over, I suspect, hand over hand. And he described actually how he felt heavier and heavier as he got further down and presumably more and more nervous. And halfway down, he actually got his axe here jammed in a crack. The rope broke, and he just managed to catch his axe. But I don't think I better do that, because these axes are insured at 800 pounds a piece.
I found the first 20 feet very easy. Then I noted a curious and inexplicable increase in my weight. To add to these various troubles, the axe caught in a crack and snapped the string.
Right.
Luckily, by a convulsive jerk, I just managed to catch it in my left hand. This performance, however, greatly excited Bergener, who, unable to see what had happened, thought his master, and not merely the ice axe, was contemplating a rapid descent onto the mer de glace.
I reckon I've got a berm on my bum. My respect for Mummery is going up every foot of this climb.
Now came a brief respite from climbing as I strolled along the Via de Bicyclette, a ledge aptly named by Mummery because of its width. Here, he said, was a broad road suitable for carriages, bicycles or other conveyances. Our final goal was in sight, but the Grepon saves its best defence to the very end. The route to the summit is a direct crack, but it's lacking in protection, it's spectacularly exposed, and it calls for a supreme effort at the top.
Okay.
When Mummery first came this way in 1881, he was forcing climbing into a new technical age. We were coming to the crux of the climb, something I was going to be made acutely aware of.
It was certainly one of the most forbidding rocks I have ever set eyes on. Unlike the rest of the peak, it was smooth to the touch, and its square-cut edges offered no hold or grip of any sort. True, the block was fractured from top to bottom, but the crack, 4 or 5 inches wide, had edges as smooth and true as a mason could have hewn them. Added to all this, a great rock overhung the top, and would obviously require a powerful effort just when the climber was most exhausted.
Okay.
The final pitch, the real test, was all that lay between us three and the summit, the Venet's crack.
This is where Mummery produced his secret weapon, a pair of tennis shoes. And in 1881, I don't think any climber had ever thought of using tennis shoes before. And I think the guides who kept their boots on and thought Mummery was absolutely ridiculous in doing this. And they, of course, climbed it in boots. And Mummery, well, we'll see how he gets on tennis shoes. I'm certainly half relieved myself that I'll be trying rubbers for this. Bloody hell. Ever I do, I mustn't drop these bloody boots. Grab that. These are the kind of tennis shoes when I was a young lad of 16. It's a going, shit.
We'd been exceptionally lucky with the weather, but that luck might be changing. It was time to finish the route and get out. Time to push the unfortunate Hervé, our Venets, out and up.
You felt it?
I think Venets, they maybe help him to go to the top of near the top of the Venet, but after he has to go up, he has to go out because there was no way to come down. So he has to go on top to save his life, otherwise he just fall down, and at this time with a rope there was no chance to stop his fall. Even now, if you put a top climber to climb the crack on top of Grepon with the shoes, with the nails, he will find very exposed and very dangerous lead and hard, difficult.
Well done, Hervé.
I'm on top.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh.
Now, well, strictly speaking, to be correct, we should change over. You should go up next, and then there's two of you to pull me up, and we all piss off home. That looks strenuous. Can you try to stand on my axe? John Frank, try to stand on the axe.
Yeah. Okay. Ah, that's better, yeah. Really better.
Ah, that's it. To lift it over the overhang. Lusana! Oh, thank God. Right, now a good trusty rope. Okay, climbing! Yeah. Right. That whole block came out about 2 inches.
Success attended my first efforts. Then came a moment of metaphorical suspense, promptly followed by the real thing. And, kicking like a spider, I was hauled onto the top, where I listened with unruffled composure to sundry sarcastic remarks concerning those who put their trust in tennis shoes and scorn the sweet persuasion of the rope.
Well, I think this deserves a celebration.
The climb recreated. As for Mummery, he grew tired of a mere European playground and moved on to the Caucasus, and finally in 1895 the Himalayas. He set off for Nanga Parbat, a 26,658-foot mountain in the Punjab Himalaya. It was the first serious attempt on a major Himalayan peak. He described it as a sheer wall of rock and ice, as difficult as a series of Matterhorns and Mont Blancs piled one on top of the other. Mummery and 2 Gurkhas were last seen walking eastwards up the Diamir Glacier on the 24th of August. They were never seen again.
And next week, Chris Bonington travels to the forbidding Nanga Parbat and tells a story of national pride in which rival teams competed to conquer the mountains.